Oh, fudge. Today is a day of mistakes. Did you have to convince her that Nintendo streaming was a legitimate career path? No. So the streaming was never meant to be a career. So here, let me break this down. It's story time. So I met my wife. I was a trained machinist. I ran steel machines and did some CNC machining, but a lot of manual machining. So that was my career path, and I was a machinist for 10 years. I met my wife while in that career, and she was going to school to be a doctor. We hit it off, and we dated and whatever. And one of the things that I had always wanted to do in my life is I always wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail. The Appalachian Trail is a trail that starts in Georgia, and it's 2,000 miles long, and you hike up the east coast of the country, and you hike to Maine. My wife convinced me that if it's something that I wanted to do, that I should do it. So she, when she was originally going to school, she qualified for an MD PhD program where she was going to go to school for 4 years for her medical degree. Well, she went to college for 4 years, was going to school for 4 years for her medical degree, and then would go to school for 4 more years for her PhD and become a scientist. So she was that's her path. She was in a program for that. Well, she went to school a few years into the PhD program and realized that she didn't want to be a scientist and opted out of the PhD program and was going to finish medical school. But in doing so, she actually had a period of time where she had to wait for the next semester to come around to pick up in her MD. In doing that, she had that time off, and she had approached me and said, "Hey, I've got this much time off. Do you want to hike the Appalachian Trail?" And I said, "Hell yeah, I want to do it." So I approached my boss, who said, "No, we can't give you 6 months off to go on a hiking trip." So I quit my job because I basically said, "You can't tell me what to do." I quit my job of 10 years. My wife and I, in February of that year, hit the trail to hike the AT, and we spent 5 months walking and hiking in the woods over mountains. When I returned from that hike, I had no job. My wife returned to Philadelphia, where she was going to medical school, and I moved to Philadelphia with her. On the trail, I had proposed, and we got married right after that. So when I got back from the trail, we were quickly married, moved to Philadelphia, where I got a job at a rock climbing gym as a rock climbing instructor. So in Philly, she finished school, and I was a rock climbing instructor. And then we moved back home after she got her degree. And we decided that she wasn't going to go into, she was pregnant and she was going to have our first child, and she wasn't going to go into the medical field. We got back home, landed in a house that I had already bought. I bought a house pretty quickly after getting out of high school. I got my job and I purchased a house, and I've been paying for it the whole time. So we moved back into the house, and it was like, holy shit, we've got a child. Neither of us have a career anymore. My question was, do I go back to work in a steel shop? My wife was looking for employment using the degree, but like I said before, it was like a curse. She couldn't find work using her degree. So we just started doing a bunch of odd jobs. She worked a bunch of odd jobs. I got a job as a sandblasting and painting well sites for like the gas well companies. It paid really well. The job was terrible. And we worked a bunch of odd jobs as we started raising our children. And we had our first son, we had another child. And shortly after having our third son, we did want to have our children. My wife wanted to have our children really close together. She was one of 4 kids who were born right one after another, and she liked the relationship she had with her siblings, whereas I was one of 5 born over a 20-year period. So I wasn't really close in age with any of my children, but my wife was and wanted to do that. So we had our 3 children back to back to back, basically 3 kids in 3 years. And I was still working at the painting, and my wife was she was actually an English tutor for a company that tutored Asian children and taught them how to speak English. Because my wife has always been very good at English. Now she is an editor. So it worked there. I'm getting there. I'm getting to the point of where retro streaming comes into play. So I had given up my job. I had hiked the trail, which is something I'd always wanted to do. And then I had landed. We had 3 kids, and I was working a job that I didn't like, taking care of children, and kind of very give it all for the family kind of thing. And I was going a bit crazy. I told my wife that I needed something. I used to be big into bar sports. I used to shoot pool. I used to be in a bowling league. I was on a golf league. I was in a dart league. Like I used to play a lot of those, and there was a lot of things that gave me like me time, and I didn't have any of that. So hitting the home and being put into that life for 3 years was really hard. So I told her I needed a little me time. It started with breaking out my PC and putting an emulator on it. And I would put the kids to bed. I'd put my wife to bed because we needed some us time after the kids were sleeping. And then at about 11 o'clock, I would go back into our back office and I would load up video games. I started with Zelda 2. I would load up video games and I would play old Nintendo games, and it was my me time. I didn't stream. I didn't do anything. I just played old video games in the dark, in the quiet, while the kids were upstairs sleeping. And that quickly turned into me asking, well, what can I do in Zelda 2 that I'd never done before? And I watched a video. I'm going to find it right now. So I knew nothing about speedrunning. Hi, I'm over here. I knew nothing about speedrunning, and I stumbled upon this video.
Rough day today for PB attempts.
This is Lordofultima. He is one of, if not still, the greatest Zelda 2 player there has ever been. He gives a simple dude a run for his money. He's currently second place in any percent. Lordo is insane at this game. Now, I stumbled upon this run, and there's one thing no, this isn't it. This isn't it. The run that I'm thinking of was a run he did offline, and he was rewatching it to do commentary. And it was his commentary of the game that was incredible to me. And that's why I do the More You Knows, and that's why I explain things on the channel, is because if I would have watched anybody else play through the game and they weren't, I would have been like, this is magic. I can't do this. This is insane. I don't even know how they did this thing. But he was rewatching it and explaining everything that he did. And I looked at it, I'm like, I can do this. And from there, I started learning the speed run of Zelda 2. And in order to do speed runs, you need to record your run. So I looked into how you record your run. I found OBS. I put OBS on my computer, and I noticed there's 2 buttons. One button is to record, and one button is to stream. And I looked into streaming. And the plus side to streaming was I didn't have to store the recordings on my computer. Twitch would store the recordings, and I had a shitty computer that I didn't have room to store things. That's why I started streaming on Twitch. Had nothing to do with streaming, had nothing to do with making money, it had nothing to do with a career. It had to do with the kids driving me insane and me needing something that was for me, and then stumbling upon speedrunning of a game that I loved, and the fact that my computer didn't have room to store it, and the way to do it was to live stream it. And that was in like November 2018. And I started live streaming on Twitch, and I literally haven't stopped since. I've been doing it for over 4 years, going on 5 years. When I started, it was evening streams about 2-3 times a week in the evening. And then when the stream got more popular, I moved to mornings. And that is the story of how I got started streaming on Twitch. It was still a good choice. I'll deal with Matt D. You should clip that story and put it up on YouTube. I could. You know, that's a good idea. Matt D's mom. Yeah.